What's going on, everybody? Wilson here, your spiritual hype man, and I am super excited for today's episode because we are today with Gianna. Say hello, Gianna. How are you doing?
Hey, nice to be
Uh,
here.
yeah, I'm super excited. So we met. I met Gianna a while back. Definitely a couple more than I don't know 5 6 years ago, almost probably more than that. And met you through Will. You do, and again, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but you're like a super yogi to me, right? You are a person, not just that, right? You're more than that. But if we were to see you for for the people listening, I met you. You were doing teaching. You were doing yoga teacher training, and you were sharing what you've learned throughout these last years in terms of the yoga to other people that were ready to take that on. So I met you through there, got a chance to hang out, and I've seen your growth and progress too throughout, the channels that you're on. And I'm super excited to get going. So let's just get this started with, Gianna, would you please just give us like a little bit of a background, little intro in terms of, you can go back as long as you want, but what led you to where you are right now, and then what is it exactly that you share with people, and then your person, the being that you are as a human being, like what is that today, and then what are you looking to do with that for others?
Sure. Um, it'd be fun to ask that question to like somebody else about me or something. Like about
Right,
yourself, right?
right,
You'd be
right.
like, hey, what does this person illuminate? And is it actually in alignment with what they're trying to do?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, um I guess if we start with why I started yoga, it was 2006. I was working, or 2006 or 2007. I was working in a salon, and I finished high school and beauty school at the same time. So I was a young 18, 19-year-old professional behind the chair. And I had a lot of back pain from just standing for hours. And I had a lovely client who said that I should try this yoga because it fixed her back pain. And it was right up the street from the salon. So I started practicing and I kind of never stopped after that. I continued just diving into the kind of the depths of yogic philosophy and the ways that we can be more naturally healthy because of a number of different reasons. I obviously felt like I was too young to experience the amount of physical pain that I was in. And I grew up in like, my dad was a dentist, my mom was a biologist, my sister's a neuroscientist, like very Western science kind of world, which has its place and did me right, honestly, quite a bit in my youth. Was very helpful. I was on antidepressants and Adderall and sleeping pills, and I was able to get through really hard times in my life because of those things. So not to say that they don't have their place,
Right.
but I I also come from a family that's plagued with a disease called Huntington's,
Mm.
and it is a neurological disease that you have a 50-50 chance of getting if you have it in your gene line or your parent has it specifically. And nothing cures it. There's no healthy eating. My sister's the neuroscientist, does research on Huntington's, and sitting in for her one of her lectures to or dissertation or something like that, and all these other scientists were like, what happens if they exercise, what happens? And
Yeah.
she's like, there's no change, there's no research that's supporting that kind of work to actually change that for people with Huntington. So my mom had that, she died from it, all of her siblings did, her dad did, and so on. And so there was this kind of need to figure out how to be as healthy as I could and live my life to the fullest early on.
Mm.
And yoga helped me do that, though I knew I would not necessarily cure myself of this disease if I did have it, because I had not been tested until I was in my 30s as just a way to like not become your diagnosis, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Love it.
Yeah, I just really went full on into the path of being the healthiest person I could. And so I really got into bodily stuff first, the asana competition, um, cleansing, healthy eating, veganism, raw foodism, breatharianism, anything,
the whole
I
shebang.
wanted to try it all, right? If somebody was like, hey, this is
Yeah,
really good for you, I was like,
done.
I'll prove that,
Yeah,
And if
right.
it wasn't, I was like, all right, and I'd try something else. But yeah, and so since then, I've lost both my parents. I've
Mm.
been divorced. I've lost my house. I've lived in my car. I have had, all sorts of ups and downs financially. And I have put more focus on in the last handful of years the need to study the deeper aspects of yoga beyond the bodily form, because you having a firm, supple body your whole life is not going to help you in the last aspects of transition. So
Right,
I'm also a death doula. I do Ayurvedic consulting. I study with the Maharishi University. And we are always trying to become more aligned with nature on every realm. So physically, spiritually, everything that has to do with taking in information
yep,
and what through all of your senses
yeah,
is, how you're digesting your life is how you're going to live your life, and which that includes dying, right?
right,
So to me, I have taken less of the focus on the physical aspects of yoga, even though that is such still a part of my practice because it allows me to be seated in my body better.
right,
But I've moved more into the deeper understandings of yoga to help me live and die better. Because ultimately, if I can do that, then I've created a portal for me to move into either the next life or whatever else is after that with more ease. And that is more interesting to me. Somebody asked me once, don't you want to live forever? Like, don't you want to be immortal? And there's like, they were all into like this book, Jitterbug Perfume, and like
right,
figuring out how to be immortals. And I was like, no, I've already lived. Really not interested in this anymore. I'm interested in dying. I haven't done that yet,
right.
you know?
It's
So,
it's a crazy concept. I guess if you ask me, I'd be like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm okay with being immortal,
Yeah.
but I can definitely understand the perspective, for sure, because this
It's a
is
way to avoid the thing you don't know.
right, right,
Right?
and
It's
I
like,
agree.
oh, let me be immortal because I know what it's like to be here and I want to keep experiencing all these highs
Yeah,
and lows.
yeah.
It's
Almost
like,
like the
you don't
fear of
know
the
what it's like
unknown
to
sort
die.
of thing too, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can
I
be an
love it.
avoidance.
I love it. So welcome to the pot, and I'm so happy that that was the intro because that's exactly in line with lots of the things that we share, a lot of perspectives that I have as well. Sometimes different vocabulary, and so let me give you like a quick just overview of the let's say the philosophy of what I've also attained throughout these last couple of years, and then if we can figure out, I'd love to talk about some of those things that you talked about, and then figure out does that work, or does it align with the philosophy, and are there things that you now continuously to progress on, in terms of thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. So in essence, from the day that you're born to the day that you die, the way we say it is, it's life is just an accumulation of situations and then decisions over time,
Mhm.
like very simply, right? And it's these situations that we find these outcomes that we're not feeling good, whether it's physically, mostly emotional, right? Mentally. What are these things? What are these decisions that we're making in these situations that continue to get us these outcomes or these cyclical moments of feeling the same way, right? And then how do we go back and revert to really identify again when it happens to make a different decision in that situation? And so the thought would be, influence creates a thought or drives a thought. Thought then drives the emotion or creates the emotion. And then the emotion is, if it's not in check, right? Because that's ultimately later on figuring out how to filter these things. But the emotion then drives the action or the decision, or in some cases, the inaction, then causes your outcome or then results in your outcome. And so if we're in these situations that we find ourselves that we're not happy with, can we go back and identify like what is the influence, what was the thought, what was the emotion, what was the action? And obviously these things happen instantaneously when we decide or react to do something or not do something. But how do we get better at it, right? And then so that at the macro level is really what I like to share with people, because it's helped me understand some of these things that all of a sudden I've acknowledged or I've become aware. I'm like, man, I don't want to feel this way anymore. What do I need to do in this certain situation to then change the action, change the outcome. You know what I mean? Let me drop that, put that on silent. Sorry. So that's the concept, and that's, you know, throughout some of these stories, and I'd love to hear how does that resonate with you when, whether it's certain situations that you've been, you know, that you have dealt with, and I'm assuming losing parents early on as well is probably a huge thing that adolescents can either go through or anybody goes through. But I don't know if it's that or if it's something else that resonates with you. But that just, like, to me, I would assume, because not everyone goes through that until later on, right? In terms of like what we deem to be the natural society cycle of losing a parent. But you know, again, I don't know if that's the intro or if something else resonates with you. But what's your thought on the philosophy? And then is there something that a particular situation that you can resonate or pick apart with that, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go back and forth between like dualist and non-dualistic talk, and things being like, oh, well, it's all happening predetermined, and whatever it is that we're going through, we're supposed to go through, and that, yeah, we have choices and we can change what it is that we're going through. And the way that I've kind of combined those two things to make them make sense, no matter what I settle on, is that no matter what it is that we need to learn in this lifetime, it will be taught to us in some way, whether it's because we're having a hard time or because we're having a good time. The lesson is what it is that we need. Because let's say that we do have choice, the power of choice, and it's not predetermined, the choices that we are making in this moment. If we are kind of turning right and something shows up on right, it's not that we should have turned left.
Mm.
It's that if we turned left, something similar would have come up to teach us a lesson that we haven't gotten yet, right? So that kind of set aside, I find that if we can show up for whatever it is that is being confronted to us with the idea that there's just a lesson here, then it doesn't matter if we make a better choice next time. It matters that we learn the lesson, right?
Mm.
And sometimes we can learn a lesson over and over again until we actually embody it, right? Learning something and embodying the knowledge are two different things. So if this kind of answers your question as to my thoughts on it, it's that it's kind of freeing to think that we have as many times as we need to get it right for us. Maybe not for everyone else. If you have a
Yeah.
family or you have like, it's not going to work. Your timing is not going to work out for them. But for whatever reason, you will not make a better choice for however long you don't make a better choice for.
Mm.
Meaning regret, I don't understand. I think it's a useless feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah. We
you
can
know,
talk about that. Actually, regret.
wish,
Yeah.
wishing things were different, all of that. You get it, and you make a better choice when you make a better choice because you're ready to, you know?
Right. Right. And well, so then how much of that do you think is the feeling, right? Because like a good example, and I've talked about this too before. Like I used to be a monster emotionally, like especially with my other partner, right? Like I would mentally and physically. And so there's lots of moments, like you said, like they'd be cyclical, and I would wake up and I'm like, man, fuck, I can't believe I did that. There'd be a lot of regret.
Mhm.
But until I realized, like, there's a couple things, even like with Patty, I was like, you know, do I love this person? Like, I don't want to feel this way. And then my question was like, well, do I love this person honestly? I said, yeah. Okay, so then why? So then I connected that feeling of one, not wanting to feel that way, and then answering my own question of like, yes, I do. And then the follow up to that was like, well, then why are you treating her that way? And
Mhm.
so once I answered that and connected that feeling, I embodied the next time, you know, certain situations, whether we're upset or something like that, to not cross that threshold of making that similar action. And
Yeah,
so,
and
you know,
love is an interesting question in relationship to that, because anyone with a heartbeat and a brain can love, but
mm,
love is not enough,
mm,
right? You probably will you probably loved the person that you were acting out on and
right,
being extremely inappropriate with. There was still love there, but it wasn't enough to make you not make poor decisions.
100%.
So it's not about loving yourself, because you can love yourself and still make poor decisions for yourself.
Right,
It's about understanding the patterns that have gotten you to the space that you're in and
right,
healing those patterns, because at some point, all of our patterns were helpful to us, right? If you were a child that was abused, if you were
Right.
a bullied kid on, at recess
Yeah,
or
I got an
whatever.
episode, My Abusive Mom. I don't think she's heard it yet, but I came and you're right. I don't want, you're right on. Please continue, but yeah, 100%.
But you have these behaviors that were defense mechanisms for you that kept you safe in different moments.
Mhm.
Now, when they continue in adulthood and they're not being used because they're keeping you safe anymore, they're reactionary, that's when your patterns are a problem. And
100%.
so until you kind of go back and maybe find the root that you've forgotten
Right.
and tell yourself, hey, I understand that you were keeping yourself safe at that moment when you needed this. I just want you to know that this is no longer necessary. You do not need, you are already safe. You have
Right.
to tell these little parts that live inside you that they aren't necessary to show up in times of, maybe shortness of breath or quickening of heart, of just some of those like biological responses to things, right? So that like take a breath kind of thing that people say when you're heated or whatever, that maybe if you're a hot-headed person where you're
Yeah.
like, shut up,
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
don't need to take a
Fucking
breath
tell
or
me
what.
nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody can
I
tell
am
me nothing.
acting how I need to act right now.
Right. Right. Right.
That kind of taking a breath allows you to access this part of you that is more rational minded. Like it's the difference between a low road and a high road response in your brain. The low road is this quick response that your brain has to things where it's a very short distance, right to the brainstem, creates a mood, and it's based off of past experiences. And
Yep.
then the high road response is information being taken in and melding with the outer parts of your brain to where there's rational mind and decision making involved, right?
Right.
And those two come forward into this like prefrontal cortex space, and you can make a decision based off of those things. So if you just took a breath after that initial mood, then you would be able to make an appropriate response for the situation that you're actually in, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, if it's the awareness factor, right? So it's being able to in those moments be aware of all these things that you said, identifying these things like, whether they're in the past previous and it would fall within influence, right? Was it my influence back way when? It's sort of how I see it, right? Like I there was moments where I was like, man, I'm not like my mom. And then all of a sudden I started questioning a little bit more and then realizing I was exactly like her. There was things that this is why I was doing. Like I connected it, right? And then once that happened, I became more aware of it and then connected that in terms of like, how do I make a better decision? Right. Kind of like what you're saying, take the breath versus be so reactive. And I would say the only other thing too is for that is just like when it was happening, there was moments of change, right? So I feel like there's three levels of change. This is again the other philosophy I've sort of worked on just based on me as the subject. One, we know we're unaware that there's some change that needs to be made, right, within whatever situation in terms of how we act or what we do or the decisions we make. Then there's a moment of awareness that we're like, something's got to change because I don't like being here in this situation. And then there's like that hard moment of I know this is what I need to do, but yet I still do the opposite. And then there's finally that moment when I think what you were saying is you embody the whole feeling situation, which then creates that difference of change. What's your thought on something like that? Like obviously, how do we get to that level of awareness to then facilitate these things? And I think it's probably different for everyone, but I'm kind of leading into I'd love to know what you do, any other situations you may have gone through, and then like do you have like a routine in those moments or maybe something that you've are working on or have worked on, how do you get to that level where now it becomes automatic?
Yeah, at this point, I have done the work to where I am often removed from the situations that are happening, even though I'm involved in them.
Okay.
Meaning, I meditate regularly, I practice regularly, I study regularly in a way that allows me to see my experiences as these human experiences and interact with them, and also see things from the other person's perspective and see that it's just this like simple thing that's happening in the grand scheme of things that is basically meaningless. So
Right
there's
there with you.
There's
Doesn't even fucking matter. None of this matters.
yeah, there's you get less triggered, right?
Yeah.
This word that everyone likes to use now, by life existing in front of you because you see, I mean, I've seen adults have full on tantrums
Mm.
in public places for no reason at all. And I think COVID kind of amplified that in
Yeah.
a lot of ways because it was very polarizing for people.
Yeah.
And people really needed to make sure that other people felt the way that they did. And that's not the point of being a human.
100%.
And it happens in politics, it happens in human rights, it happens across the board where everyone's like, why don't you feel the way that I do?
Right.
But why are they going to feel the way that you do? They're completely somebody else. And why can't you still love them when they feel different? And
100%.
so there's this kind of like removal, though obviously I'm not like disassociating. I have had that experience, but I had actually I had to do work with a professional who's a therapist and does work with ketamine and things like that. And she's luckily very good with, drug induced disassociation,
Right.
which was something that I was experiencing just from like overuse of psychedelics. But that,
Yeah.
when you look
Let's
at
go.
when you look at yourself and you're like, what? I see that this is me, but I just don't understand how this relates to anything else.
Yeah.
Because when you zoom out and zoom back in, and you kind of repeatedly do that, you start to see the greater picture. And to me, there's always something that the world is trying to solve.
Mm.
It's like, all right, what should we call it this time? Okay, let's call it COVID. What should we call it this time? Okay, let's call it a genocide. Okay, what can we call it this time? Okay, let's call it, a housing crisis
Mm.
or whatever it is. And then it's like, all right, world, let's see if you can band together and figure this one out. And we still have not got it, right?
Mhm.
So there's these like kind of generalizations that we can make about looking at the world as a whole and these very minute details that we can get into to see how things are relating with each other on these like very small scale things that when you just kind of pull back and come back in, pull back and come back in, you see these character selves existing next to each other and being just character selves. But when you are able to kind of meditate and tap into pure consciousness and feel and experience the interconnectivity that lives within even the people that have different views than you, then you separate the separation,
I like
right?
it. Yeah, yeah. 100%. 100%.
And that's kind of how I feel like I'm just a diplomatic person in general. I like to see things from other people's sides. I have very different experiences than other people do. And when I get to actually see things from their side, I can learn something about something I know nothing about.
Yeah.
And when we're willing to do that, we're able to better feel that love for anyone.
Yeah, I love
Right?
it. I love it, and I think that's huge. That's the other thing we discuss is perspective, right? It's being able to understand someone else's perspective, and in any art, like I feel like, and I've seen it before in any argument where there's confrontation or different thoughts or ideologies. Be the one if there's an ability uh to vocalize, somebody's got to be able to vocalize it in that situation to identify like the ability for the other person or yourself or whoever it is in that situation to have the perceived perspective of what the other person is feeling. And
Mhm.
I've gone through it even recently where I'm like, hey, listen, I just want to this, and I preempt the conversation without going into like, hey, this is how you make me feel versus like, hey, I just want to share with you how this is making me feel. Like I can be perceiving it wrong, but I'd love to share with you my perspective and then ask you how would you feel if that were you in that particular case. Because I feel like we look at it, and obviously we live in the I, right? Like this is me, this is my perspective, this is my world. And then if somebody comes into it, then you feel that personal like grief. But like you said, at the end of the day, we're just human beings. We're just two cells in the same planet, in a short fraction of time. That at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do the same thing. So we said in the morning, we're all just trying to do the same thing, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
And so I feel like having, like you said, having something to work on or figuring out a way to prompts. I say prompts, prompting yourself to figure out how do I approach this situation or how do I approach my day to figure out to have the perspective of whatever is happening in front of me and know that it's not like this micro thing. It is because it's what's happening, but at the same time, like this big macro level of things. So do you have like a morning routine that you work on? And I know you said meditation and yoga. Is this every day that you meditate on things like this? And how does that help? Or how long have you been doing it and how does that help?
Yeah, I'm a TM practitioner. So I practice my transcendental meditation twice a day, 20 minutes, morning and afternoon.
Okay. And
I've
for those that
done,
don't know what the TM
yeah,
meditation is, what?
and so transcendental meditation was made popular by, it was pulled out from the scriptures by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and um,
A bunch of
made
amazing yogis.
pop-
Yeah.
made popular in the States by a number of different famous people, but the David Lynch Foundation raises a lot of money and awareness around the effects of TM. And there's quite a bit of research around the lasting effects of the practice on everything from anxiety to work ethic to creativity, all of that.
Is
It's
it like
kind
quantum? Is it like quantum meditation, quantum fit, like that type of meditation, or no?
I don't know what a meditation is. It's a mantra based
Okay.
meditation. You're given a mantra at once you kind of go through the process of becoming a TM
Gotcha,
practitioner.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
So a teacher has to take you
Okay.
through the the practice. But there's all sorts of research around other mindfulness techniques that are similar that will bring you similar states of settledness, but there are aspects of higher states of consciousness that we talk about that come from meditation that is not sensory driven. So a guided meditation would not do the same thing for you as being inside your own head with your own mind and nobody kind of taking control for you.
Right.
The self-awareness is imperative
Yeah.
to get to these like higher states of consciousness and deeper levels of brain coherence, of brainwave coherence. But there are the research around mindfulness techniques and mindfulness practices is so so appealing because it says that once you start doing it, or even if you just do it once, the benefits sustain.
Hmm.
So if you say practice once and then go on with your day, some aspect of neuroconnectivity that was made during that awareness of what it was that you were doing is going to maintain itself. And the more that you do it, the more you will build more neural pathways. And it takes, you're right, it takes doing something a different way to change those neural
Hmm.
pathways. Otherwise, you just keep falling into the same grooves. And there's a lot of research around changing your way home, like the route that you take
Right.
to get home,
Yeah, I've
or
heard that. Or brushing your teeth with the left hand,
the
right?
other
Like doing something
hand or
different.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's really good for, they have direct connections with like really intense patterning to the onset of Parkinson's disease and things like that. So we need these kind of purposeful changes in order to change our brains.
Hmm. What do you?
But yeah, so
Yeah.
that my morning routine is meditation. And I usually get up and do an oil massage. It's called Abhyanga in Ayurveda. And, brush my teeth, give myself like a hot shower or a hot bath or something like that, and then do my practice or something like it, my study for the day. Sometimes I get up and I chant the Bhagavad Gita, like little sections of it, or I get up and get right into bodily practice. But yeah, I have a chunk of time in the morning where it's very self-care oriented.
I love it. How much time? How much time do you give yourself usually?
Usually it's about 3 hours
That's it's
max, I
crazy
would say.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I don't think a lot of people. I don't think most people are out there doing that. Right.
Yeah, it takes when I like go through my full practice, it's about 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah, I'm actually right there with you. When I'm fully in, like the breath work, the ice bath movement, like it take about 3 hours too. So like I would do. Like right now, I'm doing breath work. I'll get up, I'll go do breath work, I'll do some stretches, and I'm doing the ice bath. I've been doing that
Mhm.
for almost 3 years since I went and visited Harg and we did it out there.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a good one. Okay, cool. So look, we got a few more minutes. I'd like to continue going because I got a couple more questions for you. So if we have to cut it, we'll cut it and then we'll come back for another episode. Um, but that's awesome. How long have you been doing, your morning routine? And I would assume it wasn't always 3 hours. So like you've worked your way up to it. What's something
Yeah.
that could be simple for
Honest.
people that don't have one,
Right.
and what would you suggest?
It honestly, it used to be longer.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so I would say for the last 3 years, it's been like that. And then before that, it was just like it was kind of constant. And it kind of got in the way of me being in my earthly body because I was practicing and moving my body and like getting really deep into my sadhana for hours a day. And that was good for me at the time, but like I also got divorced during that time and like, like it wasn't really good for my relationships.
Right.
But and I like had a lapse in my creative outlet. Like it was the only creative outlet I was doing.
Mm.
And I would say I spent probably 2.5 years, maybe almost 3 years, not playing music and not performing, which is a huge part of my purpose here. Not purpose, a huge part of my human expression here.
Right.
But so yeah, I did
Well,
it.
hold on, which I can say is part of your purpose, right? Like
Yes.
it's your human
So
expression. It's got to be part of your purpose.
yes, and I find that your dharma or your purpose is really to seek higher states of consciousness or to seek the betterment of everything. So like your job and your like all these different things, they're not
Right.
your purpose.
Right.
They're just
But
aspects of
knowing that that's
who you
something that you want to do or that you like doing or enjoy
It's
doing.
something that I have to do.
Right. But
Yeah,
you enjoy it, right? Because you took it
I
through
love
great.
it.
How do you feel now doing it? Because I've seen some of this stuff. It looks like
Yeah,
you're
it's
enjoying it.
yeah, it's what I want to be doing all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me let's finish with what would you recommend for someone that's either starting their journey and looking to gain some awareness and maybe even start creating like a morning routine. If
Yeah.
it's not, the transcendental, was it?
Transcendental meditation, yeah.
Yeah, so something, for somebody that may not be at that level yet.
Yeah, I find it to be extremely important to have some sort of regularity to your morning and to realize that you might not like it
Mm,
at first and for a while. You have to do things that you do not like to change the things that you are doing. So you have to maybe kind of feel like you're uncomfortable in
yeah.
order to find comfort in something that is not a usual activity for you. So whether it's sitting and just setting a timer for 10 minutes to just be silent and not take any information in right in the morning, just like sit up against the wall, close your eyes and just let yourself be still, whether you're third eye gazing or whatever it is, to just not have external input, because while it is necessary to be informed and it is necessary to know the world that you're living in, it is also necessary to know the world that you're coming from, which is
Mm,
your internal world. So to just close your eyes and be stillness with and be in stillness with your world inside will help to just kind of calm the things that, even if it's just thoughts coming up and kind of decongesting from your consciousness, they get out better and keep you out of cyclical thinking
mm,
when you do it in a purposeful fashion than instead of throughout your day. And finding some sort of spiritual practice that resonates with you, whether it's, lighting a candle in front of your ancestors or, going to church if you like that, or,
right. Yeah,
reading
fill
the
in the
Torah
blank
or
for
whatever.
what means something to you
Yeah,
spiritually.
yeah, find, if it's the stars or whatever it is, to find something that allows you to connect with a deeper meaning, that you are not just this kind of physical characteristic self, can be really helpful. And I also think it's okay to be totally atheist and just believe in, that nature is your teacher or
Right.
whatever it is.
Right, exactly. I'm
It can
100% there with you. Whatever it is, it means something to, at the end of the day, you boil it down to its most basic denominator, of what you're doing within your own body, mind, and then health,
yeah,
you know?
spirit. Hmm.
All right. Well, let's end it on this one, and then we'll pop right back in for another one. Episode 2 coming up. Gianna, thanks so much for crushing. Ladies and gentlemen, just remember it's all the thoughts in our head. If you're not feeling great, just change them, turn them off, do something physical. Anything to add, Gianna, for that?
Eat some good food.
Eat some good food. Listen to some great music. We're gonna put Gianna's music on here somewhere. We'll get a link on for that too. All right. Until the next one, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Keep crushing it, and don't forget, nothing changes until you do. Peace.